Good day everybody, my name is Daniel and I'm going to be your instructor for this video. In today's video, we're going through object-oriented programming, and this video is primarily meant for grade 10s, but if you're in grade 11 or you're in grade 12 or you're just a Delphi lover, Delphi developer, then this is a video for everybody, okay? So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to click on File, New, and console application, right? We're going to be creating a console application for today's video. I'm going to remove the comment section, and then I'm going to write read line colon, I'm going to write line, and I'm just going to say hello world, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on save all, and I'm just going to say new folder. I'm going to say Delphi classes 7. You can name your folder whatever you want. I'm going to save that project in there. Just make sure that our program is running. Click on run, hello world, even though I misspelled it, okay? Excuse me. Alright, so now this is where things get interesting. Now we're actually going to be creating the actual class, right? So to create the class, you actually need to create a folder or a file, right? So we're going to click on File, we're going to click on New, and we're going to go all the way down to unit-delphi. Click on that, and it should bring you over to this, okay? So it just says unit 1. So before I do anything, before I type anything, I'm just going to save everything again, File, Save All, and it's going to bring me here. I'm just going to say, you're going to have to write in the name of your unit, or the name of your class actually. So if we were building a class, for instance, a class for, what can I say, cars, you would say cars here. If you were building a class for tables, you would type table, or whatever it was that you want to create. In our instance, we are creating a class of person, okay? So I'll say person right here, and then I'll click on save. And as you see, my unit's name gets changed because now it says unit person. And if I go back to the project, and you'll notice here that you can navigate between these two files, the project 1 and the person, okay? So if I click on project 1, you'll see something interesting that has been added. It now says under the uses, right? You now have person in person.parse. Now, if you have these two files saved, but in this main project file you don't have person in person.parse, you need to write it in, right? Say this doesn't exist, you need to write person in person semicolon. You need to write it like this, but if it still doesn't run when you do that, then you need to write in person.parse, right? Okay, so just make sure that you have this line linked in, but for most people you won't need to have this line in your uses, okay? So just click run again, make sure that your program is running. Okay, now go back to your person file now, your person unit person, and now it's time to actually create the class, okay? So underneath the interfaces, right? Underneath the interfaces, but before the implementation, right? You need to type in some things. So this is how you actually create your class. You say type class, right? And you say type, sorry, type, and then the name of your class. So how you write your name of your class, you usually start it with a T. It stands for type, okay? So you're gonna say T, and then your name of your class, which is person, and then you're gonna say equals, and you're gonna write in class, right? So by the way, guys, if this all seems brand new and kind of weird and complicated in Delphi, then it is meant to be like that, okay? Don't feel underwhelmed if you don't understand certain things that we're doing. I mean overwhelmed, because this can get complicated and you don't need to understand everything at once, okay? So it's okay, you will get to understand it as time goes on, but for now just keep on typing. Try as much as you can to understand what I'm saying. If you can understand, it's fine. by the time you get to the end of the video, this will all make sense. But if it still doesn't, creating classes and writing classes is something that you practice, and the more you practice, the better you get at it. And this is only a part 1 of a 2-part series, so you will definitely gain a better understanding the more you follow tutorials, and the more you learn, the more you type out these classes. Okay, the more you learn how to use them, you will definitely get comfortable with them. Okay, so now back to the code, right? Type tPerson equals class. I'm gonna press an enter, and as you can see, it automatically generates an end line right there. So inside of this tPerson class, what we're now going to do is that we're going to have 2 sections in it. We're going to have a private and we're going to have a public section. So now we've done that. So I'll explain what the difference is here and why we have 2 sections in the first place. But for now, bear with me, okay? So in the private section, for this person, a person has private information that we probably don't know about a particular person when it's the first time we meet them, right? So for instance, you don't know a person's name, you don't know their age, you don't know where they're from, and you don't know their background, for instance, right? And where they work, their salary, and stuff like that. So that's information we keep in the private section of a class. And some information about a person you already know. Maybe you can see the type of shoes that they're wearing, you can see the hairstyle that they have, maybe the color of the hat that they have on. That's just an analogy for me trying to explain classes, because for instance, if you would also create a class for a car, you're able to see some information about it, but you don't immediately know what the VIN number is, what if it's a rear wheel or 4-wheel, for instance, or maybe you don't know what speed it can go to. So that's information maybe that you need to first learn about, right? That's just a little example, right? So you have private information and public information. Okay, so that's just classes. And yeah, so now for private member variables, so these are member variables, these are variables inside of this class. That's why we call them member variables. You don't need to familiarize with the names, but you'll start hearing these words the more you write classes. Okay, so I'm gonna name this f name, and this is a string, and f age, and this is an integer. So write your semicolons right there. So the reason why we say f is not really that important, it's just convention, and this is something that you're going to see in your exams moving forward. Underneath the public section, I'm gonna write in, I could write in more member variables, but really I want to write in a function that actually creates this class. Okay, so it's called a constructor, and it's arguably your most important function inside of your classes. Okay, so how you write it is you say constructor, and then the name of the constructor, in this case it's create. I'm gonna open braces, and inside of this create, whenever something gets created, you want to give it a name and you want to give it whatever else information that it needs. In our class, the only information that it needs is the name and the age. Okay, so now we're gonna say the name. So this function takes in 2 arguments, whatever is in our private member variables, right? So in this case, I'm gonna give it the same thing, name and age, but I'm gonna just twist the names a little bit. A name and a age, and I'll explain why we use different kind of like names here. I'll explain that in a second. So but there we go, we have our class. We're basically done creating our class, but for this function create, as you can see, it doesn't have a beginning and end, so we don't actually write down whatever this function is supposed to do in this section of the class. So you write down your class right here, but then you have to kind of implement that class in the implementation section of the class. Okay, so underneath here, this is where we're actually going to write our implementation functions. We're implementing whatever it is that we've declared. So you can see this part as the declaration phase and the implementation phase. Okay, so I'm gonna write down the implementation of the constructor. So constructor, remember, is the function that actually creates our class. Okay, so how we go about this is that I start off by writing constructor, right, and I write down the name of the constructor, but before the name of the constructor I write down the name of my class and then the name of the function. So I go t person dot create, right, and then I do this semicolon. So now what I do, I'm just gonna copy everything that's in here, right, and I'm just gonna paste it all the way in here. And this is a function where I need to write my implementation, so I'm gonna say begin, and it should generate me an end statement. Everything that I'm gonna implement inside of the create function will go underneath here. So now let me state what exactly I'm gonna do. So when you call the constructor function, what ends up happening is that you passing in the name and the age of this class or of this object that you want to create. Okay, so let me give you a demonstration on what that exactly looks like. If I navigate back to my project 1, okay, I'm leaving my class, going back to project 1. If I'm all the way in here, right, what I'm gonna do, or how it's gonna look like when I create this object, is that I'm gonna call something like t person dot create, and what I'm gonna do here is that I'm gonna pass in the name of the person, and I'm gonna pass in the other member variable, which in this case is the age. So maybe say this person is 50. Can you see I'm passing in 2 variables? That's basically what's happening this side. So I just made a comment there just to demonstrate. You don't need to write that. Go back to your class, and in here what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these 2 values and we're gonna set them to these 2 values. So we're gonna pass in, we're gonna take in whatever we receive from this create variables that we get as parameters, and we're gonna set them to our class. It's like we're getting this information and we're actually storing it some way. Okay, so I'm just gonna say f name is set to the value of a name. We're storing whatever it is that we receive. F age is set to the value of a age, and this is the reason why we have a different naming convention, because we want to differentiate what is what. We know we're receiving the a name, then we immediately take that a name and set it to f name, which is this one. We immediately get the a age and immediately set it to f age, which is this one. So these naming conventions are just to differentiate what is what, because I could have just said name here, I could have just said age here, right, or I could have said whatever, as long as it's not f name, so that we can differentiate, right? So it's not important. If you don't understand it, just keep copying down what I'm doing, and probably will make sense later on in the video. Okay, we just created a constructor. So now let's go and actually save this file, right, and then let's go back to the main file and actually run all of this, right? Let's call this create method and let's see if it actually works. Okay, by the way, every function inside of a class can also be referred to as a method, right? A method. You can also refer to these functions as methods, all the functions that are inside of a class. But yes, go back to your main project, and now we want to actually create this person, right? So we're going to create a variable first, var, and we're going to declare a particular person. So just like how you would a normal variable like str is a string, right? In our case, we're gonna say person1 is of the type t person. So t person is actually a type that we've created, right? And yeah, so person1 is a variable. We can create as many persons as we can. You know, we can create as many persons as we can, but for now we're gonna create 1 person. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this right line hello world, and I'm gonna say let's instantiate a object. So instantiation is what we're basically about to do, which is called the create function. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say person1 is set to the value of t person dot create. We call the create function, and remember what the create function takes. It takes in two parameters. It takes in the name and the age. So we're going to pass in a name, which is a string. I'm going to say Daniel, and in age, let's just say Daniel is 20 years old, for instance. Okay, and basically we've created Daniel. We've called the function called create. We passed in the name, we passed in the age, and if you go back to the person class, what's basically going to be happening is that this create function is going to be called, and a name is going to be set to f name, a age is going to be set to fh. Let's run this program and see what happens. Ooh, voila, guess what? Nothing happens. So not to say nothing happened, but something did definitely happen. This create function was called. However, nothing is being outputted to the screen. Okay, so let's try and access Daniel's name. Let's try and get that name, right? Get the name of the object. So we're gonna try and get person1's name, okay? And how we're gonna do that is that we're gonna say person1 dot name, right? Or is it f name? It's f name because we set it to f name back in this class. Remember, we said f name. So let's say person1 dot f name. If we write that as a right line, person1 dot f name, and I run this, we're gonna get a lot of errors. Okay, so I wrote this intentionally so that we can get these errors. Why? Because I want to demonstrate something. Okay, so you can't really access f name like this, and this takes us back to why we have private and public in the first place. Private, we store things privately. Public, we wanted to share it to the world. This is another different part of a program. It is not linked, it's not particularly connected to that class. That class is its own separate unit. It's its own separate entity. So if you want to access variables inside of that class, you actually need to go about it and call a function inside of the public section of things. So inside of this public, we need to create a function that will allow us to be able to get this information out into the real world, right? So think about it like a website. You see a car on the street, you don't know how much it costs, you don't know how much fuel economy it has, and you don't know how fast it is. However, if you go to the website grants you access to see all that information about this new car that you've been seeing in the street. Now all of a sudden you can see if it's fuel efficient or not. You can see the gear ratios. You can see everything, the price about the car. So in this case, we're gonna say we're gonna write a function called get name, and we're gonna have a function called get age. That basically allows you to get information about this particular vehicle, and in this case a person. So we're gonna say function, and if you know about functions is that they return a data type. So I'm gonna say get name is the name of my function. You can name it whatever. I'm gonna say this returns a string, because remember we want to get the name, and the name is a string. I'm gonna create another function called function get age, and this returns an integer, right? And we're gonna now basically implement these two functions, right? Because remember, we have to write the implementation of this inside the implementation section of the program. Okay, so I'm gonna write another comment here. I'm gonna say get name function, or the implementation of it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do exactly what I did with my constructor. I'm going to say function, right? And then the name of the object, t person dot, not object, but the name of the class rather, t person dot get name, right? And if you press control space and press enter, it'll write down the rest of the things for you. But If it doesn't, just write down exactly what you see here, and we need to write down a begin and an end statement. Begin and end. So it does that for me. Now what I want to do here is that I just want to return a string, and the string that I'm returning is basically the fname string. Okay, so I'm just gonna say result is set to the value of fname. Basically that's it. All this function does is that it returns the get name. Okay, sorry, the fname. All right, it just returns the name that is previously hidden. So it's hidden, but now through this function that is public, we can actually access this without getting it directly, right? So let's just work on the get age there real quick. I'll say implementation of the get age, right? So I'm gonna say function t person dot get age is an integer, begin, end, and result is of the type, sorry, result is age, like that. Okay, so now we've created the implementation of the get name, we've written the implementation of the get age. Let's now go and call it in the project, in the main project. Okay, so we had this problem here. I'm just going to remove everything that we have here, right? So you should be left with only the person's creation. So now let's call get name and see if we actually get something, but I'm going to write it inside of a write line statement so that we can actually output it to the screen. So I'm going to start with the write line, and I'm going to say get person1 dot get name, like that. Okay, all right, now let's run this and see what we get. And voila, we get Daniel. We get Daniel. Why? Because now we were successful in calling this function or this method, which is public, and that's why we're able to call it, which is get name. And this get name function, basically what it does, as you can see in the implementation, is that it just returns the fname, which was previously set when we called the constructor. Okay, that's basically it. So we can do the same with get age, just like this. Okay, and let's run this, and as you can see here, we have Daniel 20. So we can also set things. So you might be asking yourself, I can get the extract the information from the object, right? But how can I actually change things? What if I want to change Daniel and change it to Kim or to Petunia or to Larato or whatever? How can we do that? You can do that by creating something that we call setters. So now remember, we said inside this public section we have a constructor and we have functions, etc. However, we actually can have getters and setters. Okay, so you want to have functions that will get you the information, and you want to have functions that will actually set things or set information. Okay, so these are getters, and you can see that by their name, and that's why we use this naming convention. So getters, that's we name them getters, and we can name these setters. So I'm gonna write the new functions called setters. Okay, so remember, all of this stuff is still within the public section of this class. Okay, so I'm gonna write setters, and setters, since they're not gonna be returning anything, we're just using them to set information, right? We're gonna have these as procedures and not functions. Okay, procedure set name, and set name is gonna take a parameter. The reason why it's gonna take a parameter is because we need a way to pass in information to this function. Excuse me. So since we need to set information to this function, send information to this function, it takes a parameter or an argument, and that argument is of the type string because we're setting the name, right? So I'm gonna say a name is a string. There we go. So we're passing in an a name, which is a string, and we still have red squiggly lines on it because we haven't implemented it yet. So underneath your implementation section, right, scroll all the way down and let's write implementation of the set name. So I'm gonna say procedure t person dot set name, and set name a string. So we're gonna say begin, end, and how we set it is that we're just gonna say f name, since our member variable is called f name, and we're gonna say set that to a name, which is the new name, right? And remember, like I said, this could have been anything. I could have said new name over here and new name over here, and change this one as well to new name, but I'm just gonna leave things as they are, right, as a name, because I like that. So let me just demonstrate how this works. If I go down to my main project, and so since we have, if I run this, since we have get name and get age, if I run that, as you remember, we have Daniel and 20. So if next I say let's set a new name, right? So I'm gonna say person1 dot set name, and I'm gonna pass in Kim, right? And now I want to print out person1, see what we have, right line, and let's print out person1 dot get name, which should get us the name of the person. Let's see if it actually changed the name or what it did. I'm gonna run this, and guess what? Yes, the name has now officially been set to Kim. And the reason why we can still see Daniel and 20 is because these lines are already written, and they're written before we actually change the name, but it's only after we change the name. Now if I were to keep running these two lines or this line, I would still get the name Kim all the time whenever I'm dealing with person1. So that's what we have. So I'm gonna go back to the person's class. If I go here into the setters, right guys, and I can write another procedure, and usually this is what you're gonna have in most projects, in most exams. You're gonna see a similar format where you have getters, you have setters, you have a constructor, and you have your private member variables, and these set whatever is inside of this, and these get or extract whatever is inside of the private member variables. So set age, I'm just going to implement that, right? I'm just going to copy whatever I have here already, and I'm just going to change the code for some of these things. Okay, this is set age, this is a age, this is set age, and f age mixed with a age. This should work. Procedure t% to set age. I don't know why we still have an error. I'm gonna try and run that. Gives me an error, and it says that a age is not of the type string. That is correct, it is integer. So that's a little something. Let's run that, and it still runs normally. Okay, we haven't outputted the age yet. Let's try and set the new age and output it again. So I'm gonna set an age and output it, right? So I'm gonna say person1 dot set age. I'm gonna pass in the new age. I'm gonna say that Daniel is now 60, or Kim is now 60, and I'm gonna say right line. I'm gonna pass in person1 dot get age, right? Let's see what we get. I'm gonna run that, and there we go. We have Daniel, whom is 20 years old, and after that, when we change the name Kim, we call get name, we got Kim, and once we set the age and we try and extract the age, we get the age 60. So that is absolutely beautiful, and we have successfully created a class, the type of class of person. So most of the time this is what you're going to see. This is the bare bones of it all. You write your setters, you write your getters, you write your constructor, your member variables, and you write down your entire implementation for that. 99% of the time this is what you're going to be dealing with in exams, right? And this is probably what your teacher taught you. This is probably just so that you guys can have clarity on certain things and implement it yourself, and I really hope you go ahead and do that. Okay, so guys, without further ado, thank you very much for tuning in to the video. Please guys, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow, and if you do that, I'll be able to keep creating more content for you guys so that you guys can learn and can go on to become future developers, right? And to pass your exams, right? Get good marks, all right? So have a lovely one.